So I was convinced I was going to die young. And I thought, well, I might as well make the most of what time I have and make my life as exciting as possible. So that very much influenced me into throwing myself into all these different work environments.
Hi, I'm Will Duffin, and in this episode of the World Extreme Medicine podcast, I'm chatting to Advanced Nurse Practitioner Jen Dorwood, who's one of the stars of the awesome new reality TV show 007 Road to a Million, which is streaming right now on Amazon Prime Video. Jen and fellow nurse Beth absolutely smash it through a series of James Bond-inspired challenges located all around the globe, going deep into the game. Spoiler alert, we do talk about lots of moments from the show, but please listen on to find out how Jen used her experiences as a jobbing NHS nurse and extreme medic, working in prisons, asylum detention centres, as a reservist in the RAF deployed to Afghanistan, in addition to International SOS in Guyana, to bring her A game into the show. We also explore the impact that a diagnosis of premature menopause in Jen's 20s had on the whole trajectory of her life. Jen is really keen for anyone who's had a major medical setback in their early life to learn that you can use this and work around this to create the life and the career that you want. Welcome, Jen.
Thanks.
What even are you these days, Jen? Are you an advanced nurse practitioner or a reality TV star? What is it?
Well, technically, I guess, yes, I'm a reality TV star, but I'm still now an advanced nurse practitioner and now back to work and life as normal, really.
Well, what a crazy ride you've been on. I mean, does it all feel very surreal looking back at it now, going back to the coalface and, in emergency department? Sorry, you work in urgent care, don't you? How does it feel looking back on the amazing experiences you've had, traveling to all those different locations, doing all those Bond style challenges and going really, really far in that show as well?
It feels like another lifetime ago now because we finished filming in February. So it's actually nearly a year ago. This time last year, we were filming. So we finished filming in February, and then we had quite a long wait for the show to be put together and then released. So it is great to relive it with everyone. But it's been just a normal summer of working and not being able to tell anyone about it because we were under contract. So
Yeah.
people knew that we'd done a TV show, but I wasn't allowed to tell anyone about it. So I just got used to not talking about it.
Well, my wife and I binge watched most of the episodes last night with focusing on the bits that you were in. And honestly, it's so great. There's the locations, all of the drone photography, the challenges were really super intense, and the suspense when you're doing those questions. What was that like when you had to do the questions and you knew that there was £100,000 on the line and you had three possible answers? Was that really high? I mean, you seem like someone that you can deal with high pressure, but how did it feel in that show when you were filming?
It's really stressful. Even when you get a question and it's actually quite a simple question, you really overthink every single one. So you go round in circles because of the pressure of, you don't want to lose, you don't want to go out of the show, you don't want to lose the money, you want to continue because it's great fun to make the show. So although it looks like it might be a really simple question to answer, you second guess yourself a lot and you want to be absolutely 100% correct or as close as you can be before you hit that button. So it's not as easy as it looks, even if the answer is very obvious from home. When you're in that position, it's really not.
We're on the sofa screaming the answer
Yeah.
and thinking, "Come on, come on!" Oh,
Yeah.
it's brilliant. And your partner Beth in the show, who's also a medic, isn't she?
Yes.
Also a
Yeah.
nurse.
She is ACP.
ACP, yeah. I just loved how unflappable you both were. You just kind of are so level-headed and very kind of rational about everything. And I don't know. Do you think that's something you learned from working in emergency medicine and maybe being a reservist in the RAF in former years? Is where have you developed that skill of just being able to take a very high pressure, time critical situation and just break it down and work the problem?
I think my character started to be shaped earlier in my career because I worked in prisons, and so you might have a prisoner that might be shouting and swearing at you and throwing chairs around trying to get something, and you just couldn't react. You just have to stay calm. And then also dealing with emergencies in the prisons as well. You might have to grab the emergency bag and run and deal with whatever situation you had to deal with. And then also being in Afghanistan, although I had a couple of experiences there that were a bit scary, but there I was transferring patients. So it's just, yeah, you just had to stay calm then and not panic.
Yeah, you reflected on a couple of those moments when you were out there in 2010. One in the show, one was when you were seeing young men with horrific injuries, and you're running the medical clinic, and there was a suicide bombing, and then another was an in-air explosion on a helicopter flight between Camp Bastion and Kandahar. I mean, those both sound like really very intense moments in your life.
Yes, when the helicopter engine suddenly went bang and smoke started coming out the back of the helicopter, I thought that was it. We're going down. And then, of course, the crew actually said, look, we might have to make an emergency landing, so just get your rifles ready. And when they were looking worried, that's when we started to be worried. But of course, it was absolutely fine. We turned around and it did get back to Bastion. And I just stayed completely calm. But I didn't purposely do that. That was just my body kind of went numb because I just thought, well, I can't do anything about it. So there's no point panicking.
Yeah.
And I just stayed completely calm until we actually landed. So,
imagine surviving a Chinook helicopter crash and then having to then take on a firefight with the Taliban afterwards. That is just,
yeah. I mean, you're trained to use rifles, but as medics, you still don't really expect to be put in that position. So everyone has to do some sort of basic training, but unless you're actually physically out on the ground with the soldiers, you hope to never really to be encountering that sort of situation, because you're there to provide medical care, not to get into firefights. So I'm very thankful that didn't happen.
How do you feel now about your time in the RAF? Obviously, you saw some pretty intense things while you were out there. Do you think that was really positive, formative time in your life, or do you have regrets about being part of the army? What are your thoughts on it, looking back from where you are now?
I definitely don't have any regrets about joining. I grew up with the RAF because my dad was in the RAF and my granddad was in the RAF. So I was very familiar with it from a young age. I was also in the Air Cadets. So I was actually planning to join the RAF full time at one point as a nurse, but then I changed my mind and decided to stay as a reservist. So I was really proud of my time in the RAF. I would have stayed longer in my reserve squadron, but I decided to move to Australia. So I had to leave, obviously, when I moved to Australia.
I think you're a great example. And there's so many people trapped in medical careers, paramedics, nurses, doctors, other allied health professionals. But you're a great example, Jen, of the range of different possible directions you can take your career. You've mentioned prisons, working out in RAF, doing aeromedical transfers, but you've also worked in asylum seeker detention centres as well. That must be a fascinating area of work, particularly Christmas Island. Can you tell me what that was like?
So I really enjoyed Christmas Island to start with. There was lots of detainees there from all different countries, from Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, lots of Rohingyans. And so they were lovely people. There was families, children, and myself and a friend used to run the immunisation catch-up programme for them. So we enjoyed working there, although there was varying levels of people who weren't happy to be there. On the whole, it day to day, it was quite a nice job to do, and it was a great environment to work in as well, being a tropical island. So you did have some nice times on your days off, and you'd get to go and see all the crabs that Christmas Island is famous for, the red crabs and the red crabs. And I was there during a big riot, which was in, I think, 2015. There was a huge riot, and they ended up having to call out the Australian Federal Police to calm this riot. And it was crazy, the amount of damage that was done. And then we had to carry on trying to provide medical care afterwards to the same people, but with a mostly destroyed facility, because they'd got into the medical centre, they'd trashed it, they'd thrown water everywhere, they'd burnt stuff. And that was challenging. That was very, very limited resources.
Were you worried for your own safety during these riots or afterwards? What was the threat to you as staff out there?
No, not at that time. No. We were never actually felt that we were in danger at any time during that point, because we generally all had a good relationship with them. They knew we were there to look after them and try and help them and provide medical care to them.
Yeah. And one aspect I'd just like to ask you about, Jen, if that's okay, is so you were diagnosed with premature ovarian failure in your early 30s. Is that correct?
20s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did that mean you were put on hormone replacement therapy?
Kind of. I was actually put back on the pill as a
Yeah.
hormone replacement therapy, and I was on and off that. But I wasn't, unfortunately, in my opinion, particularly well looked after by the NHS. But
Yeah.
I was also in quite a lot of denial because I was
Mm.
quite young. So I was sort of shown, okay, this is a support group that you can join if you want to, but I put it out of my mind. I just ignored it. And yeah, I was in quite a bad way for quite a long time, at least in my early 30s, I think. It
Do you
really
think
shaped.
that yeah, how did that shape the decisions you made in your life and your career, do you think?
Well, it meant for a long time, because I didn't know any better, I thought I was going to die at a young age, because I thought, well, I'm on HRT, so I'm going to get breast cancer, because I hadn't looked into it enough or been told, no, your body needs these hormones at this age. So you're just replacing what's naturally there. So I was convinced I was going to die young. And I thought, well, I might as well make the most of what time I have and make my life as exciting as possible. So that very much influenced me into throwing myself into all these different work environments, trying to make my life as interesting as possible and give myself lots of different experiences. And then once I started down that route, uh, I kind of just changed, and that became what I enjoyed doing. And I became more adventurous, and it gave me some really great life experiences.
Yeah, it was really interesting to hear that, Jen, because you've taken what at the time, I'm sure when you were 20, being told that your ovaries aren't functioning, they're not producing the right level of hormone, and fear that you might die young of cancer. That must be an awful, very difficult period in your life. But what
Mm.
I admire there, Jen, is how you've managed to use that. You've shaped a whole identity around that, and it's created the Jen that we see today, which is someone that's so outgoing, gregarious, adventurous, risk taker. Can you see a parallel version of yourself? What do you think your life would have looked like had you not had that diagnosis in your 20s? Do you think you'd be having all the experiences you've had up today?
Yeah, I don't think so, because I always wanted to have children. When I was 16, I was a nursery nurse before I went into nursing. And I remember thinking, well, I don't know what I'd do if I couldn't have children.
Mm,
And it was like some awful prophecy. And then when it happened to me in my 20s, it was the worst thing that could have ever been told to me. It was
yeah.
devastating, because I did want to be a children's nurse as well.
Mm,
But I initially did my adult nurse training. Then, of course, I couldn't face going into that. I didn't want to do any more study. So then I started doing other things with my life. But it's turned out that it's actually had a really positive impact on me, and I've made my life really interesting. So
yeah,
it's,
you
I
certainly
can't wish
have.
that it could have been
No,
any
no
other
one
way.
can deny that. Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? How in your 20s, society's all of society's telling you have to get to the point where you have lots of kids, and then you have this big nuclear family, and that is the kind of dominant paradigm, isn't it, for life in
Mm.
modern world? But there's many other ways of achieving happiness and a fulfilling life, and you're a great example of all the other things that are out there. Um,
Yeah.
let's move on to a couple of key moments in the show, the bits that I particularly enjoyed. One of them was you got to play with a real James Bond car. I saw you got the oil came out of the things at the end, the bulletproof little thing came up. It looked like really was that a fun moment?
Yeah, that was great. That car was just brilliant. It's the
Was that a
classic
real
Bond
car
car,
for
isn't
the
it?
actual?
Yeah, yeah. It was worth millions as well. It was a beautiful
Wow. Is
car.
it Goldfinger, or what era of Bond was the car that you and Beth
Oh,
were
it's been in
pressing
a
all the
lot
buttons
of
in?
them.
Okay.
Yeah, it's most recently it's been in the most recent Bond film, No Time to Die. But I'm
Yeah.
not enough of a Bond buff to tell you which all individual films the DB5 has been in, but it's been featured in many, many films.
Yeah. The other moment I really liked was when you had to, this might have been one of the most intense moments, so you had to shimmy, you're in Istanbul in Turkey, and you had to
Mm.
shimmy along this rope over the street. And I can see that you're not someone that is that comfortable with heights. Is that fair to say? You're
I am
nodding.
actually.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I am comfortable with heights because I fly a paramotor in my spare time
Oh,
when the weather
wow.
agrees. Yeah, so I'm not
Yeah,
scared of
that's
heights at all, but it was quite
clearly.
wobbly going down on that rope because the rope actually went downhill. It was suspended like this between the buildings.
Yeah.
So I was going down head first downhill on the rope. So I was just trying to keep my balance. So it was a bit nerve-wracking, but I was fine. I wanted to do it.
Yeah, you just got it done, which was great. It was really good.
Yeah,
And then there's another moment where you had to abseil down to get another case, and then ice climb back up again, and you were on the side of this
yeah,
cliff in the middle of Switzerland, of this mountain face. That looked pretty intense as well. How did that
yeah.
feel at the time?
I really enjoyed that actually. I wasn't scared of that challenge at all. I don't know why. I think maybe because I'm used to seeing the world from that height when I'm flying. So it just
Oh yeah.
heights like that didn't bother me. And I just really enjoyed it. I found it fun.
Oh great.
Great. And of course, it helped pull me back up as well. Yeah, I mean, it was
Was it
physically
type
hard
one
work,
fun?
but
Was it fun at the time
sorry.
as well as type two? Was it type one fun? Was it fun at the time, or was it type two fun where it was just fun afterwards? And it's easy
No, it
to,
was fun at the time.
yeah.
Yeah, it was fun at the time. I really enjoyed doing it. Yeah, I'd do that again.
Oh, awesome, awesome. It was great when Beth was kind of like, "Oh, you sure you want to do this, Jen?" You could see she really didn't want to do it. She was very, I think, diplomatic when she and you were just like, "Yeah, no worries, I'll do that." Off you went.
Yeah, Beth isn't keen on heights, but she still had to
Yeah,
manage her fear of heights because she had to be up there helping pull me back up. So that's one of the things about the
yeah,
show is that you have to conquer your fears to be able to complete the challenges. Because the
yeah,
dive, I really struggled with the dive because I'm really claustrophobic, and I
yes,
unfortunately had a mask that kept letting in water, which is not shown on the show. But that made
yeah.
it really difficult for me. Whereas Beth had no problems at all, and she's done a bit more diving than me in the past, though. But she really enjoyed the dive. So
But
different
do you
strengths.
feel like
Which,
yeah, you complement each other's strengths and weaknesses
yeah,
in those moments. And yeah, the diving was funny because you got to the cage to get and you both saw that there was you saw the circular saw and the hammer, and you were bashing away, and then you're like, and you flipped it over, and there was a big hole underneath. That was
yeah,
great.
yeah,
It's what we all would have done the same. I think we all would have reached straight for the tools.
yeah.
Yeah, that was good. I enjoyed the diving. And then there's a marksmanship in the snow with the laser guns, and then you got the target, and it goes boom. That looked pretty fun.
That was really, really difficult, the shooting,
Yeah,
because you couldn't see where you were shooting. It wasn't like a little red laser appeared on the target that you were aiming at. So you had the target in your sights, but you still couldn't be entirely sure. So we really thought we weren't going to do it. We were just
yeah, and a lot of
shooting and shooting and
your other
shooting. Near the
competitors,
end, I thought,
they were out. That took a lot of people out the game, didn't it? That challenge was really really difficult. But
it was hard.
yeah, maybe did you think your military background helped you a little bit with your marksmanship?
Yeah, I think so, definitely, because I knew that lying down was a stable position, which is
Mm,
why initially
yeah,
I led down straight away. And then also we were leaning on the table because when I saw the episode back and saw the brothers doing their shooting, they weren't leaning on anything at all. And they were quite wobbly.
yeah, yeah. You're
So I
right. They were just
definitely
standing up,
think,
weren't they? Yeah,
yeah, they were standing and kneeling and they were wobbling a lot. So I definitely think my shooting experience, although it's a long, long time ago now, helped because I remembered lying down was always the easiest.
yeah, yeah. It must have been quite an intense because you in. I mean, the number of different locations you went to is absolutely insane. I mean, you were in where did you go to? Scotland, Italy, Chile,
Mhm.
Jamaica, Turkey, Switzerland. If I missed anywhere?
We didn't go to Chile or Italy, sadly. Those were
Oh,
the other contestants.
oh, that was the other contestants. You didn't make the yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But I mean,
yeah, we didn't get to
that must have been
Italy.
quite an intense shoot schedule.
It was. Yes, it was. It was on, and you'd get your shooting period schedule, and then you'd be back to work for a bit, then you'd be away again. So yeah, life felt very busy around that time, but we both loved traveling, so it was exciting. A great opportunity to visit different places that you might never see.
And how did you manage to balance that with your clinical work back home in primary and urgent care?
I luckily ended my permanent job in the May before we started shooting in the July, because I was working in Guyana before the show started. I was out there doing a rotational position, but I decided to come back to the UK because I'd been doing that for about 18 months. And while I'd been home in the UK between rotations, I had been just carrying on doing the odd agency shift. And so I went back to doing full-time agency work, or as and when agency work, and just fitted it in around the shooting schedules. So for me, it worked quite
Yeah,
well because they would give the
yeah,
dates when we would be needed to be shooting, and then I could pick up shifts around that. So I made it work that way. And that's the good thing about
yeah.
being a
That's one
nurse
of the
practitioner, is working in
yeah.
different areas like that.
You can, yeah, being bank agency or locum, I think it's got loads of advantages for doing the other things on the side, hasn't it? And this is one of the big
Yeah.
problems about getting a substantive post, isn't it, in the health service, is that it is harder to
Mm.
negotiate with rota managers and things to get the leave to do these
Mm.
things. It's one of the kind of big
Yeah,
problems, that
definitely.
barriers that people face. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
And Jen, you were on the WEM Keswick course earlier this year. Unfortunately, it all
Mhm.
happened in the wrong order. I think that would have been great preparation for doing this show, wouldn't it? But you did it after, obviously, filming this. How did you find the Keswick course?
So unfortunately for me, the Keswick course, well, it was a great course, but it was only a few weeks after we finished our last shoot. And so by that point, I was feeling quite burnt out because I'd been working in Guyana for 18 months and doing a lot of traveling backwards and forwards during the pandemic, and being locked up in hotels for weeks at a time as well. And then we went straight into filming the show, which ran from July last year to February this year. So I felt like I'd been doing a lot of traveling. So I was very, very burnt out. And the thought of doing any more expeditions at that point didn't really appeal to me. So there was lots of people who were just hadn't done any more expeditions or adventures in their career, and they were really keen and said, I can't wait. And I just sat there thinking to myself, I don't want to go anywhere, not for 6 months.
Just want to sit on the copa with on the sofa with a magazine and a cup of tea for just surface for air. I can totally get that, Jen. It's easy
Yeah.
to forget, isn't it, when you're doing things like this, just how much of a drain on your energy levels that can be, and how you still need that downtime to process and regroup.
Mm. Yeah, it was a great course though. Really varied, lots of really enthusiastic people there. The instructors were great. So I did really enjoy it.
Oh, good. How did you find the search and rescue exercise at the end? There's a bit of bond in that, I think, where you've got to navigate your way to the casualty in the woods, see and treat, and then you've got to medevac them back to base. How did you find that? And was that on the level of the kind of challenges you'd faced with in 007 and Road to a Million?
That was really tough actually, because when we performed that search and rescue on the mountain, it was freezing and it was cold and raining, and it made it really, really challenging. So I would say possibly, yeah, maybe some of the earlier challenges, it was similar to
Yeah,
that, but I'd still say the bond challenges were more difficult because we were more sleep deprived and they went on for longer. But unfortunately, a lot
yeah.
of that isn't shown in the show. So much was cut that some of the challenges look a bit easier than they actually were.
Yeah, I think everyone's got to remember that when they're watching it. This is the thing about reality TV. As viewers, we sit on the sofa and we often make judgments on how that was. Oh, I could do that. That looks easy. But we're only really getting this very narrow snapshot of the action, and like you say,
Yeah,
so
sure.
much ends up on the cutting room floor, doesn't it?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they had a lot of filming and they had to get it into 8 episodes for so many different pairs. So it was so much they had to cut, and it must have been really difficult for them. Really difficult.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was great. I mean, you did so well, you and Beth, Jen, to make it so deep into the show. And I mean, it was a really tough question. That one question that took you out. What's worth
Mm.
£500,000? Is it 25
Mm,
grams of plutonium? I mean, I was rooting for plutonium as well. I really was. That seemed like a really sensible answer. But yeah, how do you feel about that? Looking back on that question now, you had 5 answers, and one of
mm,
those was worth £500,000. I mean, that's an insane amount of money
mm.
for anyone, whether or not you work in the health service or not.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Looking back on that now, you and Beth?
It's well, it's regrettable that we went out, but I don't think we would have answered any differently, to be honest, because who could have known? It was really difficult, and I've not met one person, a friend or family or colleague who's watched the show who said to me, "Oh, I would have known that one." Everyone has
Yeah,
said, "I wouldn't have had a clue." So
yeah,
it was difficult, but at that level, it's not going to be easy, is it? It
yeah.
does get
Do you know
really,
what?
really tough.
I went on Rightmove after that, and I look. I still can't believe you can buy a Caribbean island, how many hectares in a Caribbean island for £500,000. That seems crazy cheap to me.
I know. Well, you can buy a house for that where I live. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's
yeah.
why
West Oxfordshire, where
instantly.
you are. I mean, that's you're not going to get. You'll get like a 2 bedroom flat for that. I yeah.
Yeah, who would have known? I guess. So
Who
that's
would
why
have
we
known?
we
Who
can't
would
feel
have
bad
known?
about our decision. It's yeah, it was difficult, and I don't think we would have even considered that an island could have been in the answer there. So yeah, it's a shame, but never mind.
Oh, but hey, it makes for great watching, and honestly, as the suspense of just waiting for the little dots on the screen to come along and find out if
Mm,
you've got it right and you're going to continue. Yeah. Well,
yeah,
hey,
it's
Jen, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on your experience of being in the crazy world of reality TV and your some of your medical background. Really appreciate your time today. If people want to kind of learn more about you and reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
I think possibly on social media. Um, Possibly, I've got a road to a million Instagram at the moment, so possibly that one because it's public, so anyone could message me, and it is Jen 007 Road to a Million. So particularly if anyone happens to be watching who does have some of the health problems that I had at a younger age, would like to talk to me, I'd be happy to talk to them because, in a way, I'd like to be an inspiration for young women who might be in the same position as what I was in, and just to be able to show to them, look how great your life can be if you have a diagnosis that is initially really shattering to you. So I'd like to be able to support someone in some way. So yeah, if anyone would like to contact me, I'd be happy to talk.
Jen, that's a really nice moment to end on. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Will.
Thanks for listening to the episode. Please feel free to rate, review, and subscribe on whichever platform you're listening to. Please also head over to the World Extreme Medicine website where you can find more engaging content on extreme medicine webinars and indeed the collection of courses from our global network, including humanitarian, disaster relief, expedition, space, military, tactical, and performance medicine. Thanks again.